Okay, cool. So, and can you guys see the board pretty well? Fairly well? Okay. All right, today what we're going to talk about is OOP in JavaScript. And obviously you guys have done OOP in your other stacks. Can anyone tell me how you guys approached OOP in your other stacks? What did we need to make objects? Dwight. Sorry, not giving you a hard time, but so if we wanted to make an object in, say, Java, how would we go about doing that?
Well, in Java, I'm thinking you have to make a constructor, a model with an empty constructor, or attributes, or something to carry through the object.
Okay, so yeah, we need a class, right? And then probably in your class you'd have a constructor, right? All those things. So when we're making objects in Java, we need to start with the class. And the class is like the blueprint of what we're making. JavaScript is a little bit different in that rather than starting from a class, it's actually a prototype-based language. So what we're going to do today is just explore some different ways of creating objects in JavaScript, and we'll kind of talk about what those different ways will give us as far as the output, and also why we might want to use one as opposed to another. So the first kind of way that we can create an object in JavaScript is just by declaring, so let's just say var object equals some object, and I'm just going to lay out some properties in there. So we'll say some, let's say prop val. So I've got one key value pair, prop, and then the val is val, and then we'll say prop2, val is val2 on that object. And if I console log this object, we should see both of those key value pairs. Let me just save the file here, and then down here I'm going to run it in Node. So we got OP lecture D2. All right, so we're just simply logging the object as it is, and that's what's called an object literal. So we just created an object with no preconceived notions about what it needed to have in it. We just defined the properties as we went, and of course I can also add on properties as I like. So if I want to say object at prop3 equals val3, then we would expect that the object would now have that third property in there as well.
Quick question, people. What data type is that in Python? Dictionary. So same thing, right now. Right now is the same thing as a dictionary. Kind of.
Exactly. So that's what we've got so far. We just have some properties. Any questions on just creating an object literal? No, pretty straightforward, right? The next kind of object creation that we're going to go over is slightly different in that what we're going to do is we're going to create a function that takes in some arguments, and then with those arguments we're going to construct one of these object literals inside of our function, and then we will return that back out as our output from the function. So we'll start with we'll create a function called human creator. And that's going to take in some values. So maybe we'll take in a name, right? Take in I'll do something different, eye color. And then height. And with those attributes, what we're going to do is we're going to assign those to the properties of the new object that we create inside the function. And then we are going to return that object right back out when we're done. So really, we can kind of do this all in one step. We can return this object literal and then just fill in the properties with whatever we got from our arguments there. So we'll just return an object. And let's set, we'll set the values equal to these values that we took in the function. So we'll say name, eye color, eye color, height is height. And is this confusing to you guys at all if we use the same names that we use in here? Does that, because I can change these arguments if that's problematic. No trouble there. Okay, cool. So let's just actually create a person in here. So we'll say var h equals create human, and it's actually human creator. So let me change the name of this. Create human. All right. So now I got to pass in a name. I'll just start with myself, and then we've got eye color. I think it's green. Height. not even sure. Alright, and then for this, just say 5. Oh gosh, got an issue with these little, I'm going to use these backticks because I wanted to use an apostrophe in my height. So say 5, 7, got that. Okay, so we got our first human, and then let's just console log that out. So there we go. Name, eye color, height. Let's create one more. Let's go with Jesse. You are the next human. Eye color. Blue? Oh, all right. Okay. Height, approximately? 6'2". Okay. There you go. Yeah, that does. It definitely does. All right, so let's console log. Whoops. We'll set you as H1. Okay, there we go. Cool. So we got Jesse, eye color blue, height 6'2". All the information we were expecting, right? Absolutely. Right. The reason it's doing that is because we are using we have an apostrophe in there, so it's essentially escaping that apostrophe. Yeah. Yeah, that's all that's doing. So the next thing that we'll do is we're gonna add an actual function on this object, or actually all the objects that we create of the human type, and our function is just going to be, we'll say the name. say the name, right? And that'll be a function. And we're going to console log, oops, something like this. My name is, and then we'll concatenate onto that the name of this object using this .name. Oops. And then down here, so we've got our humans already. Let's let's do that with Jesse. So we'll run the function here, h2, say name, right there. And there we go. My name is Jesse. Any questions here on what this was attached to in this example here? So this is referencing the actual object that we're returning here from our function. And it just reaches out, when we invoke that function, it's going to reach out and grab the name property there, because that's what we were looking for. One quick shortcut too I wanted to show you guys about just assigning object properties is that we actually don't need, if the names are the same, we don't even need to use the colons at all. We could simply say this, get rid of that, get rid of this too, and get rid of that. So just keep things nice and tidy. We still get the exact same output. So this is, whenever I'm doing object literals, this is what I prefer to use. Is just it keeps things very succinct.
So you just name the key value.
So if the variable name that you are setting to that property is exactly the same as the property name itself, you can just plug it in like this. So we don't need to do colon, and then the value would just simply put the variable name there.
That's only your method, right? You're just putting it in a line, bar, whatever.
No, we could do that in line as well. So if I'm creating an object, so let's just say, oops, we'll just say some prop equals some val.
Oh,
Oops. And then if I create a new object, so we'll just say obj equals, and then I'll create this object literal, and I'm just going to assign the some prop key there like that. And if I console log this, I should get that same key value pair. So I'll get the some prop as my key, and then some val as the value there. Oops. Yeah. So just kind of a shorthand thing that'll maybe save you a few seconds here and there. Whatever. Kind of nice. All right, so the third way that we're going to talk about creating objects is a little bit different. And in this way, in this third way, it's going to be a little bit more familiar for you guys since you've done class-based languages before. And what we're going to do is, instead of having, or actually in addition to having this create human function, we'll leave that there for now. But we're going to have a new function which is just going to be called human. And this is going to take in the exact same things that we took in before. So name, eye color, and height. All right. But this time around, rather than returning an actual object, I'm just going to simply set these properties on the object to be equal to the values that came in to the function. So we'll say this dot name equals name, this dot eye color equals eye color, this dot height equals height. Okay, and one thing you'll notice here is that we're not actually returning anything out with this function. And JavaScript essentially does this implicitly for you, so when you invoke this function and you create a new human, it's going to return back the object to you, so you don't have to worry about returning. Okay, so let's create a human using this second function here, and I'm just going to get rid of some of this. Oops. Okay, cool. So next human, say var h2 equals human. Margot, you're up. What's your eye color? Brown. Height? 5'1". Okay. Okay, cool. So let's console log h2. Oops. Define. Oh, whoops. There's an obvious error. So we have to use the new keyword when we create objects with this syntax. So if we're referencing this, remember that the return is implicit, but in order to actually get back the object that we're creating, we need to use the new keyword with this syntax. So that's why you guys see we got an undefined down there, because we did not have new in front of human. So let's try it again. There we go. So what's different about this new object that we created compared to the other ones? Aside from the say name method, I know that wasn't created in the second function there. I'll just comment this out. So if we run this again, whoops. Now it's trying to invoke that function. Hold on. Comment that out. All right, so what's different about this one versus the other objects that you guys can see? It says human, right? So it actually is telling us here, this is an instance of a human. And what that is also telling us is that this particular object has access to what's called its prototype. And the prototype is something that that all objects that we create using this function will have access to. And what's nice about the prototype is that we can also add methods that all these objects will also have access to. So we have a couple different ways that that we can add a method. We can add it to our human constructor. We can add it directly inside the constructor. That's one way. So let's try that. We'll say this dot say name equals function, and then we're going to console log my name is just that name, right? All right, so that was on our human constructor function. So let's go down and actually invoke that with the new human that we've created. So we won't console log h2. We'll just do h2 and invoke say name And there we go. So we essentially added that method to all objects that are created using that particular function.
So when do we use one or the other? Is it they're doing the same thing?
Yeah, so they're almost doing the same thing. The slight difference is that, as we saw in the second case, it's of type human, right? And it actually has access to the prototype. And we're going to talk for a few minutes about what the prototype does and kind of gives us access to. But generally, you're going to be using the second way. So yeah, in this case, what we're doing is we're putting the method inside every object that we create using that function. Now we're gonna explore a different way of doing it, where we don't we don't put the method inside each object. What we're gonna do is we're gonna attach this method to the prototype, and what will happen then is that if we try to invoke that method from one of our created humans, first JavaScript is going to check that human and see, okay, does this human have a method called sayName? And then if it does, it will invoke that method. If it doesn't, what it's going to do is it's going to look up the prototype chain to the prototype of humans, or of human in this case, and see if human has that method. And then if that does, it will invoke that method. Now, if we keep going up the prototype chain and ultimately you have an issue of the method was not on there at any point, then your program's going to throw an error and it will say sayName is not a function because it couldn't find it. All right. Bless you. So now we've got this method directly on the object. I'm going to comment that out for now. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the method to the prototype. So underneath where we have human here, we'll do it like this. So human.prototype.sayName equals a function. And then inside that function, we're going to do the exact same thing. So I'll just grab this and paste it in. And here, so we get the same output. It still does the same thing. But the difference here is that we haven't added the method to every single object that we've created, or that we will create. We simply added it to the prototype, and then as we try to call the method from an individual object, so maybe let's create another one for h3 is Karina. Spelled that right, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Eye color? Brown. Height? 5'9". Wow, you're taller than me. Making me feel short up here. Okay, so let's try doing the same thing with Karina. Say name. Okay. Great. So we're still getting the same output, but let's actually log these objects and see what they look like. So instead of h2 and h3 saying names, let's just go console log h2 and h3. There we go. So again, sorry, there's no line break there, but let me just H3. There we go. So we got our line break. So if we look at these objects, you'll see that neither one of them have that method directly inside the object. So then the question is, where is that method coming from? You guys remember? Prototype, right? So first what JavaScript's doing is it's checking the object itself to see, is say name inside of these two, at least when we were invoking say name. And then when it doesn't find it there, it's going to look at the next level up, which is the prototype of human. So what we're going to do is we're going to check to see, I'm going to uncomment this up in here, and then we'll make a slight change to it. So we'll say from object, my name is this name. So this would actually, if this logs, we know that it was in the object itself, right? And then when we added it to the prototype here, we'll say from prototype, my name is this name. Okay, so then we'll come back down here, and before I do this, comment these out. Just close that real quick. Okay, so we have say name in two places, right? We've got it both inside our constructor, inside of our object constructor, and then we also have it outside here where we've attached it to the prototype. So what do you think is going to run? What do you think we're going to have printed to the console when we run this method against our two human objects? Any other opinions? Both. Interesting. Well, yeah, no, but we're only invoking the function one time, right? But that's an interesting idea. So let's try it. Does that make sense why it's logging from inside the object? Yes? Good. Solid? Question?
No.
No? Okay, so let's think about why we might want to do it the second way as opposed to adding it directly into the object. So this is perfectly acceptable and it will work. Obviously, we can invoke a method that was inside the object itself. But what if we had a situation where we were creating a billion humans? Or it didn't have to be a billion, maybe some really large number, a couple million, something like that, right? In that case, every single one of those humans is going to have the say name method as part of it, right? But if we add it to the prototype, we're actually only adding it in one place. We're just adding it to the prototype, and then when we invoke that method, we can still find it because it's gonna look on the prototype if it doesn't find it on the object itself. So really, in terms of the way that this works, it's a little bit different than the class inheritance that you've seen in the past, and we only have to define a method in one place. We don't have to have that method be a part of every object that we create. Does this make sense to you guys? Why that why that would be a positive.
How do you get the one from the prototype?
How do we get the say name method, you mean? Is that what you're asking?
How do you log from prototype
Okay, so yeah, that's a great question. So the only way to get that is if we did not have the method inside the object itself. So if I comment this back out, it won't be able to find it on the individual object. So when we try to call that method, it will then look up the ladder,
So you call it
down
the same
the
way?
line. Yeah, we're gonna call it the exact same way, but the place that it finds it will be different. So rather than finding it in the object, it's gonna have to look down the line. It has to look up to the prototype. So commented that out. Let's do that. So again, now we're getting it from the prototype. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No?
Everybody's a master already.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, but if you guys do have any questions while you're working through the assignments, definitely let me know. And or next time we get together, if you have any follow-up questions about the prototype, we can definitely talk about them. This afternoon, I believe we're going to have an activity on hoisting, and that will be 3 o'clock, right, Eduardo? 3 o'clock.
If you want me to be there, I have something at 3:30.
So we could do it at like.
I can start it at 3 and then you can take over.
That's cool.
When I have something. 'Cause
Okay. Great. Sound good, guys? So 3 o'clock. Keep chugging away on those assignments. Be good.